I've been playing ARK for a few years now, and I've often wondered which of the creatures are based on reality and which are complete fantasy. So I've decided to dive into the creatures of the ARK and find out more. Some are obvious and others are not, and some are a hybrid of fact and fiction. I should add, I'm not a paleontologist, just a curious gamer doing her own research. The Rhyniognatha is one of the largest creatures on the island. It sounds and moves like a helicopter, and for some reason, it's big enough to carry a Rex. The real Rhynio was an amazing creature too, but for completely different reasons to those of the game version. For a start, we need to scale down, like way down, and then travel 400 million years back in time. 400 million years ago, the world was in a time period that we call the Devonian. This is the period in history where the first significant evolution of life on land occurred. Plants started to spread across dry land, creating the coal forests, and the earliest land animals, mainly arthropods, started to become well established. The fossil that contains the head of a Rhyniognatha was discovered not far from Aberdeen in Scotland in 1919. It was labelled as supposed larval insect and not named. It wasn't until 1928 that it was given the name Rhyniognatha hursti. At this time it was reported that it might be related to insects, but it was nothing remarkable, so no further research was done. Early fossils of insects are scarce, and it was an incredibly rare find, especially from this far back in history. The size of the specimen is tiny, its jaw measuring a little over 0.1mm long, and it's speculated that the Rhynio's total length would have been a little under a centimetre. The fossil was donated to the Natural History Museum in London, and that is where it waited until it was rediscovered in 2004. Whilst at the Natural History Museum gathering photos for a book about insect evolution, 2 entomologists came across the Rhynio fossil and looked at it again, and what they saw astounded them. With more powerful microscopes than had been available during the 1920s, they discovered that the fossil was not as primitive as previously thought, and in fact it had all the hallmarks of a true insect. What the scientists saw were scissor-like jaw mandibles with a structure that is only ever found in winged insects. This provided compelling evidence that the Rhynio could fly, even though there was no evidence of wings on the fossil. This discovery also pushed back the date of the first flying insect by about 80 million years, and meant that wingless insects would be older than first thought too. Evolving with the ability to at least glide made a lot of sense. During the Devonian period, shortly before the Rhynio's existence, plants started to grow bigger. They had sprouted from being dwarfs no more than a metre tall into giants over 30 metres tall. Being able to negotiate this new, taller world required the ability to manoeuvre high above the ground. But not everything may be as it seems. In 2017, the Rhynio specimen was reinvestigated, and like before, microscope technology had improved again. What the new researchers found was that the ancient mouthparts looked more like those of the ancient myropod centipedes. Like insects, centipedes and millipedes are arthropods, and they existed at least 430 million years ago. In fact, the oldest known animal to have lived on land is a millipede. The new researchers argue that, from what they can see on the fossil, the structure that supports the mouth is more like those of a centipede than those of a flying insect. The Rhynio is the oldest land-dwelling creature included in ARK, and whether or not it was one of the first flying insects, it's still an amazing insight into a world that is barely imaginable. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, make sure to comment "tiny bug" below, and I'll see you in the ARK. Take care.